Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The spectacle of illegal immigrants separated from their children at the border has ceased to be a news story in any traditional sense of the term. It is now an event, a kind of competition in which elites vie to see who can reach greater heights of rhetorical excess and self-righteous posturing. It is performance art, really. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi and even Hillary Clinton took an early lead in the contest by bypassing public policy questions entirely and moving straight to theology. Here are part of their sermons. Watch.
The hypocrisy of all people of faith in our country not to clamor for this, for what the administration is doing to end.
Those who selectively use the Bible to justify this cruelty are ignoring a central tenet of Christianity. Jesus said, "Suffer the little children unto me." He did not say, "Let the children suffer."
So the same people who support third-term post-viability abortion for purposes of sex selection are now lecturing you about God and sin and the holiness of children. Feel chastened? But wait, there's more. So much more. On Facebook, Senator Ben Sasse called the administration's policy wicked, as in immoral and devilish. Former First Lady Laura Bush likened it to the internment of the Japanese during World War II, a moral stain upon this nation. Former CIA Director Michael Hayden went all the way. He tweeted out a picture of Auschwitz, a death camp, and compared the U.S. government to the Nazis. After sobering up, Hayden walked that back a little bit on television, but not much. Watch.
I know we're not Nazi Germany, all right, but there is a commonality there. I've lived in Germany for 3 years, a more civilized people you cannot find.
But General,
and so I was trying to point out we need to be careful not to move in that direction.
Oh, we could go on. There is so much more just like that. The rich and powerful reminding you just how virtuous they are. You think any of these people really care about family separation? If they did, they'd be worried about the collapse of the American family, which is measurable and real, but they're not worried about that. In fact, they welcome that collapse because strong families are an impediment to their political power. And that's why they're always lecturing you about the patriarchy and the evil of the nuclear family. Millions and millions of American kids are growing up with one parent at home, families separated thanks to their policies, and that's fine with them. Many of those kids, by the way, have a parent behind bars. It's not just illegal immigrants who are separated from their children. The majority of American citizens in prison have minor kids they've left behind. Their families have been separated by force by our justice system because they committed a crime. So in that way, these kids are just like the kids you've been watching on television today. The difference, of course, is they're Americans, so nobody is spending $35 grand a year apiece to make sure they're okay. Democratic politicians and cable news anchors don't visit their foster homes to highlight their plight. They're ignored. This is one of those moments that tells you everything about our ruling class. They care far more about foreigners than about their own people. You probably suspected that already. The other thing you may have noticed is that they're not especially interested in solutions to anything. They're great at yelling and at preening, not so good at fixing and building. We could strengthen our borders to keep illegals out. We could fund more immigration courts to process those who sneak through anyway. We could even build more housing facilities at the border, holding facilities, to allow families to stay together while their asylum claims are processed. But the left is not interested in any of that. Their only solution is immediate amnesty for anyone who crosses our borders with a minor in tow. And of course, that's the same as no borders at all, not to mention a powerful incentive for child smuggling. They don't care. Because no matter what they tell you, this is not about helping children. A lot of people yelling at you on TV don't even have children, so don't for a second let them take the moral high ground. Their goal is to change your country forever, and they're succeeding, by the way. Since 2014, to name one example among many, at least 500,000 Central Americans who came here illegally have been released back inside our borders. Did anyone vote for that? And more to the point, who's going to pay for that? Not the people you've been watching on television today. Their kids go to private school if they have them. Their neighborhoods look exactly like they did in 1960. No demographic change at all, just like they like it. There's no cost to them. The cost is entirely on you. But don't complain or else they will call you Hitler. We wanted a closer look at the facts behind this story, and so we spoke to the acting ICE director, Thomas Homan, just a few minutes ago. Here's part of it. Mr. Homan, thank you for joining us. You've heard prominent people compare your behavior to that of the Nazis, to that of the Roosevelt administration in turning the Japanese during World War II. How do you respond?
I think it's an insult to the brave men and women of the Border Patrol and ICE to call law enforcement officers the Nazis. They're simply enforcing laws enacted by Congress. You know, I wish that there was this much outrage about separation of families. I wish I heard this much outrage when we met with angel mothers and fathers whose children were killed by illegal aliens, U.S. citizen children killed and separated from their families forever. I never heard this outrage. So I think people on the Hill need to straighten themselves out here. Let's protect American citizens as much as you're fighting for the illegal alien.
We're about to speak to the parent of one of those children killed in the way you described. Did you notice cable news anchors or Democratic politicians swooping in to comfort those families when their kids were killed?
No, I didn't. You know, the media the last few days, I've been incensed by the purposeful, the intentional misleading of the American people by politicians. And they say that the Trump administration wants to use these children as political pawns. The Trump administration isn't down there having political sideshows with these children and talking about this issue. The Trump administration wants Congress to fix this, and Congress has the authority to fix it. But what no one's talking about is the underlying reason for this whole argument. Are these families really escaping fear and persecution? The immigration court has said in the last year and a half, over 80% of these claims are frivolous. So first of all, we got to attack the very foundation they're arguing these people are coming to this country. These parents themselves are using these children as pawns to gain entry to the United States, knowing that we can't detain them. And as far as the separation of families are concerned, you have to put the blame on the parents. They are choosing to enter between the ports of entry. They know they will be separated, but they want to blame the government when we were forced to do that. So let's put the blame where it lies, not on the fine men and women of the Border Patrol and ICE. We're enforcing the law.
What would happen, well, you don't make the policies, of course. What would happen if we do what we're hearing we must do, and that is give immediate automatic amnesty to anyone crossing illegally with a minor child in tow? What would happen?
Well, let me talk. That's what's been done. That's what we're asking Congress to fix the Florida Settlement Agreement. Because let me tell you the way it works right now. Under the Florida Settlement Agreement, if a family comes in our custody, we can hold them for less than 20 days. We release them. Most of them won't show up in immigration court. Immigration court last year issued over 40,000 orders in absentia. That means these people didn't show up. So what we want to do is have Congress change the law so we can keep these people detained in a family setting, so their case can be heard by a judge. I would think everybody, regardless if you're a Republican or Democrat, wants your cases heard. But because you don't like the final decision, doesn't mean we forget about it. Because last year when we actually went to look for these families who got final orders in absentia, I got hundreds of letters saying, how dare you put your finite resource looking for women and children? I'm like, wait a minute. You wanted them to have due process at great taxpayer expense. Because you don't like the decision, let's forget about it. That's not the way we work.
Mr. Homan, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, sir.
His son was killed. Don Rosenberg knows what it's like to be separated from a child involuntarily. His son was killed by an unlicensed illegal immigrant driver. Don Rosenberg joins us tonight. Don, thank you for coming on. I should say, just for context, because I don't think this is a political issue or needs to be one. I don't think you're a Republican or any kind of conservative. So I don't think you necessarily have a political axe to grind. But looking today at the response in the media to our immigration policy, what's your reaction?
Well, I've been furious about the Democratic response to illegal immigration ever since this happened to my son. They refuse to talk to me. They refuse to talk to anybody. They never acknowledge. I mean, I've never heard one Democrat in the last 7.5 years since I've been doing this acknowledge any crime directly, except when they're sitting in a congressional hearing and it's their constituents who's been killed. And as soon as they walk out the door, they forget about it. It's reprehensible the way they deal with this issue.
So why the concern? I mean, look, I think all children are equally valuable in the eyes of God, for sure. Politicians are elected to represent their people, their citizens. Why do you think they seem more interested in the children of foreign nationals than American children?
Votes and money. Very simple. That's it. They don't care about them either. Out here in California, you know, we've got the sanctuary state, and Kevin De Leon is happy when people that have, you know, quote unquote, haven't committed a crime are deported, because it gives them all something to scream and yell about. It's just the whole thing is so backwards, it's hard to believe. But the problem is that much of the news media fails to report the truth. I mean, it wasn't until today, until they started talking about florists. All they kept saying is, oh, well, they can be together, you can let them go. And obviously that's not possible without, as Director Homan said, you got to let them all go, and then they never show up.
Well, exactly. Don, thank you for joining us and for your perspective. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Congressman Vicente Gonzalez is a Democrat representing Texas. He recently toured a border detention facility. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thank you for coming on. You've got a lot of citizens, American citizens, in your district who've been separated involuntarily from their children. One of them is named Alicia Delgado. She was convicted of manslaughter. She says she was defending her son in self-defense, and she's in prison. She's from your district. She's one of your constituents. I don't think she's married. Her son is very young. He has no family. Have you visited him?
Well, I have not even heard of him, okay? So otherwise I would try to reach out to every child. But this is not, we're talking about a crisis that's happening on the border of hundreds and thousands of kids that are showing up to a border. It's not about just our constituents who get in trouble, who get separated. Most of the folks who are coming across have no prior criminal history. They're coming here because of failed American policy, which actually I'm shocked that we're not talking about how we got here. We're talking about the children at the border.
I'm a little concerned. I'm sorry. You may need to speak a little more slowly. Tell me once again why the concerns of foreign nationals are more important than those of your own constituents. Because we have over 1 million
I'm concerned about
people behind bars in the United States who've been separated from their kids.
I'm concerned about every child who needs help, and my constituents particularly. But we're talking about.
So how many children? But hold on. How many children have you visited? American citizen children separated from their parents by incarceration. American citizens in your district.
Because I was a lawyer, so I absolutely.
No, but this year, how many of you, as a congressman, how many have you visited?
That have parents that are in jail?
Yeah, they visited the children. So you highlighted the plight of the children who have been separated. A lot of your constituent citizens have been separated involuntarily from their kids. They're behind bars. I don't think you visited any this year, have you?
I'm talking about children who got here with parents that are not criminals that are being separated. And regardless of political beliefs or immigration policy leaning, regardless of where you are in immigration policy, I think we should all agree that children are sacred and we should take care of them regardless where they come from.
Well, I
and when
agree.
we're talking about the border policy, we should be talking about what got us here, which is failed American policy in 3 Central American countries that I think we should be engaging. And we're talking about the symptom and the result now. We should be engaging those countries and figuring out how we could boost their economy and incentivize them to stay home, so we don't have to continue to put Band-Aids on the issue.
There's some truth in that. I wouldn't blame the United States for people trying to sneak in illegally.
I'd be happy to talk to you. I'd be happy to talk to you about parents that are in jail, but we're talking about kids that are crossing the border with parents. That's a separate conversation. And I'd be happy to engage both of them.
No. It's the same conversation. It's been going on for hundreds of years. Americans held for crimes are separated from their minor children.
Right.
And not always when they're convicted. If your people are awaiting trial. And I don't think that you've spent a lot of time worrying about that. And I'm just wondering why, since your job is to represent America.
These people
what have you done about
are usually placed. These people are the kids that you're talking about are placed with family members or foster homes. We don't have the same situation. They're not put in cages in warehouses. That's not the way American children are being treated with parents that have committed criminal activity. We're talking about refugees.
Let me ask you the
We're talking about
solution.
people who are showing up to the border. You want to know the solution to the Central American refugee problem?
But let me ask you specifically what we should do with someone who's coming into this country for the second or third time, and that's a felony, as you know. It's not a misdemeanor, it's a felony, and has a minor child in tow.
That's a different issue.
Person be given amnesty?
That's a separate issue.
No, that's
a separate issue, and my answer is no.
News story.
My answer is no to that. But children who are coming here for the first time with parents with no prior criminal history, who are being separated for the sole purpose of punishing the parent and deterring others from coming, I think is abusive to children, regardless of what your political
what should we do?
Beliefs on immigration policy are.
I'm not making a political case.
We should find a humane way.
Or what?
No, we should find a humane way to treat them, to keep them as family units, have them attend their hearings, and if we're going to deport them together as a family unit, not separate them. Right now we have parents we have toddlers and babies being ripped from moms and dads who just across the border, and they're getting held in a jail cell. Well, you have that happening in your district, too,
with people arrested for DUI, but you don't seem that concerned about it. At all.
How can we agree with children being sent thousands of miles away?
To Americans. Right.
Absolutely.
Why don't you take care of your own people first, and then we can worry about this. Yeah, you don't.
We actually do.
Okay. You're right. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Hillary Clinton recently condemned the policies we've been talking about as horrific. That would surely come as news to the Hillary Clinton of just 15 years ago. In 2003, this is what Hillary Clinton said about the crisis on the border. Watch this.
I am, adamantly against illegal immigrants. Certainly, we've got to do more at our borders, and people have to stop employing illegal immigrants.
Huh. Nothing has changed since then, of course, except for her party's calculation that it could only win by importing a new class of voters, which they are trying their best to do. Mark Stein is an author and a columnist, and he joins us tonight. Mark, I don't know if you were prepared, really, to take a lecture on the Bible from Hillary Clinton and Barbara Boxer and the rest, but do you feel edified as a Christian and an American by the new theocrats on the left?
It's interesting. I think they're being rather selective in their sudden biblical fervor. It's very important to the left to maintain this particular public policy, which is what it was, as you said at the top of the show. That's what immigration is. It's a public policy. Yet whenever it's treated as such, Hillary and the rest of the left, and I regret now an entire phalanx of first ladies, has decided that we have to have the sentimentalization of public policy. Well, which is it? This is a country that is supposedly on orange alert. Over half of the illegal aliens present broke into a country on orange alert. That is to say, they've come here since 9/11. Americans shuffle like a bovine herd through security that demands to know the consistency of their pumpkin pie if they're flying home to Thanksgiving from New York to Cleveland, but the rest of the world is entitled to walk across the Rio Grande if they happen to have a little moppet in tow with them. You can't have it both ways. Right now, Americans are living on orange alert if they make a domestic flight, but their borders are open. You're the chumps of the planet for going along with it. And I may be the harshest person here speaking tonight, because I know as a legal immigrant how heartless and ruthless the legal immigration bureaucracy in this country can be to children and the separation of families and all that. And these Democrats and Laura Bush never has a word to say about that.
What would happen if you showed up at the airport without a driver's license and said, look, I have a moral right to get on this plane and you're a racist for not letting me on? Would that work?
No, it wouldn't. I mean, we're bifurcating into a society where the law-abiding are subject to ever more onerous constraints, while the avowedly lawless are somehow venerated and fetishized. I will say, as a legal
immigrant... But you've lived this. If I could just pause and say, you actually are foreign-born, and you have, without getting too personal, but you have a family. I mean, how has the immigration system treated your family?
Well, I'll tell you, I was crossing at Derby Line, Vermont one time. I won't go into all the details, but the rather officious twerp at the border threatened to call ICE and have my daughter deported. And he said then she'd be in Canada and you'd be stuck here in America. And I said I wouldn't be much of a father if I did that, because I'll tell you, 10 minutes after you deport her, I'll be back in whatever country you deport her to. Because if the price of being in America is that I have to be separated from my children, then I pass. And I am surprised, frankly. We're told these are just hard-working people are being snatched from the bosoms of their mothers. It's awful. It's heartbreaking. Why don't we just say at the border, well, you can't come in, but if you do, your children will be taken from you. And why don't these people then say, oh, well, I don't want to be separated from my children. Can I go back across the Rio Grande to the southern shore? This is the difference in treatment between the lawful and the lawless.
I can promise you're the only person on television today who's asked that question, and I'm glad that you did. Mark Steyn, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Well, the press has surpassed even the Democratic Party's professional hacks with their collective meltdown over the border policies. We'll break down their hysterics in some detail next.
Problem taking kids and putting guns to their heads and then demanding the rest of the country do what they want them to do. Until we recognize that we are operating with a white nationalist government that will take children hostage to get what they want.
They come to the border with nothing and you throw children in cages. You're a parent. You're a parent of young children. Don't you have any empathy for what they go through?
All I can say after talking to the people, watching the people, listening to the people, that the Statue of Liberty, I think, is weeping right now.
Democratic Party is all for open borders, but their water carriers in the press have taken it a step farther. They're not even trying to hide their opinion that any kind of border enforcement is a Nazi move. Derek Hunter wrote the book, Outrage, Inc., How the Liberal Mob Ruined Science Journalism in Hollywood. It's coming out tomorrow. Derek Hunter joins us tonight. Derek, you spent a year thinking about, researching, and writing about how outrage is ginned up in the media landscape to serve a political purpose. Do you see that at work here?
Absolutely. You had played perfect examples of that. They want people to feel. They don't want people to think. I have as much empathy as any other human being. I assume you do too. Yet I'm not governed by it. I understand that no matter what I feel, the law is the law and it has to be followed. And it's very important. And if we're governed by emotions, then suddenly we are a law of whims based on the particulars of any given moment or any circumstance. The law has to be applied equally. As uncomfortable as it is, Congress has the ability to change the law if they want to. But instead, we've got grandstanding reporters showing pictures from 2014 like they happened yesterday, trying to gin up emotion to prevent rational thought. It's diabolical. It's brilliant marketing, but it's really diabolical.
Well, it is marketing, though, because it serves a larger purpose. I mean, a product is being sold here, and I would say it's a Democratic Congress is what's being sold here. But it's interesting how these moments like this kind of seem to come out of nowhere. I mean, these policies are long-standing. Long-standing, but all of a sudden, as of yesterday, it's the most pressing thing that ever happened. How does this work? What are the mechanics of it?
The liberal politicians gin it up. They need a distraction. They need an issue. If you ask 10 people on the street what the Democrats are running on in November, I think 9 of them wouldn't know, and the 10th wouldn't know there's an election coming in November. So they need to keep people angry and afraid. So they gin up this controversy. The willing participants in the media go immediately and parrot the talking points, roll the B-roll, spew the emotion. They roll out the made-for-TV scientists to spew their studies, and then the Hollywood celebrities come rolling in like the final running back at the end zone push to try and drive it home. It is all about emotion. Nobody is talking about what this happened in the Bush administration or in the Obama administration. It's not even mentioned. If you want to address a problem, one of the things you have to do first and foremost is be honest about it, and they aren't doing that because they don't really want to address the problem. They want to gin up emotion around the problem so that people are motivated to vote. They're afraid. Some government's going to come and get you. Michael Steele the other day on MSNBC said that if we don't stop this now, your children could be next. That's insane. He should know better. I know Michael Steele. Normally he's a rational person, but he's swept up in this, or he's a willing participant. I don't know. I don't care which. But that's the mentality of it. It is all pure emotion, no rational thought. The same thing on race. There are more people who attend the WNBA games, which is the least popular sport on the planet in the country. 330 million people. There are only, the Southern Poverty Law Center says there are only 6,500 members of the Klan. In 1920, Tucker, there were 106 million people in the country and 4 million members of the Klan. If you don't call going from about 3% of the country to a rounding error membership in the biggest racist organization in the country, if you don't call that progress, nothing is progress, and they don't want people to know that there is progress. They're lying.
Which they are.
I detail it all in the book.
Outrage, Inc. Out tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Even more evidence tonight that efforts by the FBI to spy on the Trump campaign bore fruit. Brand new thread of that story. We'll dig into it next. Donald Trump advisor Roger Stone said there was possibly another case of the FBI meddling in the Trump campaign in 2016. In May of that year, Stone says he was approached by a man who went by the name Henry Greenberg. Greenberg wanted to sell the Trump campaign damaging information about Hillary Clinton, he said, claimed from the Russians. Stone says he said to the man, and contemporary texts back this up, Trump never pays for anything, and that was it. Greenberg was apparently an FBI informant for some number of years. Stone now says he believes the entire scheme was an effort by the FBI to set up the Trump campaign. What is the truth here? Andy McCarthy is a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York and a contributing editor at National Review and a very close observer of this story. He joins us tonight. Andy, thanks a lot for coming on. What do you make of this story?
Tucker, I think it's yet another one of these stories where, you know, there's a Russian involved, so there must be collusion or it must fit into the narrative somehow, but it really doesn't, you know, there's no linear connection anymore, to me at least, to all these stories and what the original allegation was, which was that there was a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, not just assorted Russians,
right,
the Russian government, to commit espionage to overturn the election or to change the result of the election. And I think, you know, if there was anything to this particular story, I mean, we'll have to wait to see all the facts come out, but, you know, why aren't people in handcuffs already? You know, why haven't we've had, how many people has he charged? And there's no one been charged with any kind of a collusion offense.
Well, no, that's absolutely right. What's so odd about this, though, I mean, what would be the odds of a guy who apparently really had worked for the FBI before? He cited the FBI and listed the cell phone number of an FBI agent in a number of his immigration applications. So apparently he was on their payroll in some capacity. Coming to the Trump campaign, offering secrets from the Russian government, unlikely the Russian government was employing a guy who worked for the FBI, come on now, and that Mueller would know about this and would seek out the texts that prove that it happened. I mean, what are the odds that that's not an FBI operation?
Yeah, well, this guy apparently worked for the FBI for 17 years, according to the reporting that we've heard, and had supposedly, according to his version of it, just ended that relationship in 2013. But in my experience, for what it's worth, there are like officially signed up informants, and then there are informants who, you know, skulk around, listen to stuff, and report back, and suddenly they're informants again, you know? So I think there's an awful lot we have to find out about this, but when I was a prosecutor, I learned not to believe in coincidences. For what it's worth.
Well, I stopped believing those long ago. This guy seemed like a skulker, also, for whatever it's worth. Andy McCarthy, thank you. Sure. A trustworthy man on this topic. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Well, a Chicago public school decided that Career Day was the perfect time to lecture kids, so they brought in a self-proclaimed cop killer. Huh? That story next.
How do you...
Well, Career Day in elementary school is a great chance to get kids dreaming about their futures when they can grow up and become teachers, doctors, and apparently cop haters. One elementary school in Chicago enraged parents, understandably, after its principal invited an activist to the school who routinely posts violent anti-cop rhetoric online. Fox's Matt Finn was contacted about this, reported it, and has all the details. Matt?
Tucker, that Chicago elementary school principal, Mary Beth Kunat, suddenly retired with just weeks left in the school year. It happened after she invited a police extremist to talk to students at Wildwood Elementary School here in Chicago. That extremist on social media calls himself a radical. In February, when a Chicago police commander was shot and killed execution style, Ethos posted online, "F him and his family." Ethos also posts the term CPDK, which stands for Chicago Police Department Killers. The anti-police extremist refers to cops as pigs and posted about killing all the rich people. Ethos has hatred for police because he alleges that a Chicago police officer killed his friend with a taser. The school principal says she brought in this anti-police extremist to talk to students about his poetry and civic work, but things went off the rails. We talked to one mother whose 3 children listened to Ethos on Career Day.
He told them that all the police were bad and all the police wanted to kill people. I was very disappointed that someone would come into the school and preach hate about the police. Or even if he was talking about anyone else, it would have upset me.
Mary Beth Kunat wrote a letter of apology before resigning, writing in part, "I was present when his narrative took a negative turn about policing, at which point I immediately intervened. I care about your children and would never intentionally expose them to or endorse this type of negativity." Some parents dispute that Kunat immediately intervened, saying Ethos spoke to a few classes without interruption, and that Kunat, the principal, has recently been pressured by some parents to introduce anti-police philosophies to students. Nearly every parent we talked to said the principal was doing an excellent job but ended up making this grave mistake. We talked to one Chicago police officer whose children went to the school. He says the career day speech was an indoctrination, and now the students have been exposed to Ethos online accounts.
Insulted, angry. I can't believe that she didn't vet him properly. Look on his Facebook account, because some of the things that are in his Facebook account are absolutely horrible.
Ethos declined our request for an interview. The Chicago School District says it was not aware of Ethos and did not approve him speaking to students. I briefly spoke to Mary Beth Kunat on the phone, and she emphasizes that she suddenly retired and did not resign with many years left in her contract. Tucker.
Matt Finn from Chicago, thank you. Well, a jogger in Oakland finally had enough of the city's enormous homeless population and took matters into his own hands to clean up the city. He's being treated, of course, as a criminal rather than as what he is, a victim of failed policies. We'll ask an Oakland lawmaker about that next.
This program.
Well, for decades, the Bay Area has let itself become a haven for vagrants at the expense of the few normal people who still live there. Finally, somebody had enough. Earlier this month, a man was videotaped gathering up a vagrant's belongings and throwing them in the trash. It was on public property, by the way. Now, that man has been charged with second-degree robbery, and of course, the area remains the same hive of needles and human waste it has been for years. Rebecca Kaplan is an Oakland City Council member, and she joins us tonight. Rebecca, thank you for coming on. So this story had me thinking, Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. If I showed up on your front lawn with a sleeping bag and a case of vodka and sort of moved in to stay, which I may do, would you be arrested for trying to make me leave?
Well, I would welcome you. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you and hope we could have dinner sometime. But I think more to the point, the person who threw the belongings, in this case of a homeless man, into the lake and stole somebody else's cell phone, that person would be prosecuted whether the person they did that to was homeless or not. However, as to the deeper solutions, tomorrow the City of Oakland will be debating our budget, and I will be fighting for better solutions to homelessness. We need to be helping people live in situations other than our streets and sidewalks, even while I absolutely condemn this assault and would condemn it no matter who it was done to.
So, but I mean, it just seems like the cards are kind of stacked against normal people, married people with kids who have jobs, kind of like the backbone of America, the people who actually built the country. They're having a tougher time living in your state, so they're leaving, as you know. People get arrested for taking homeless, detritus, trash off public property, but they don't get arrested for defecating in public? How does that work? What's the thinking behind that?
Well, certainly if people want to volunteer to help clean up our lake, our creeks, our public ways, we have volunteer opportunities. We have ways that people can help clean up, and I welcome that. This was not an act of cleaning up the lake. This was stealing someone's belongings and throwing them into the lake. But why don't the homeless clean up? That was a trashing of it.
But wait a second. We have a ready-made group of people, a lot of them young, with tons of time on their hands. We call them the homeless. Why don't they clean up their crap? Why are they the ones littering? Why aren't they cleaning up?
Actually, it's predominantly not the homeless people that are littering. We did a study, and about 85% of the illegal dumping is coming from a variety of illegal sources having nothing to do with the homeless. And so the illegal dumping is a huge problem that we're fighting to crack down on.
And illegal is the word.
Is very serious.
Well, good. I'm glad you're doing that.
And so that's
you're getting to the causes.
One of the things we need to take action on. As well as,
but still, why wouldn't
providing better places for the homeless to be? In other words, it's not enough to say where we don't want people to go. We need to provide the places, and I'm fighting for us to use public land, churches that have offered to volunteer their sites to allow the homeless to have places they can be, where they can get assistance, where they can get matched with social services and turn their lives around while living in places better than the sidewalks.
But have you?
But in the meantime,
and churches
assaulting
certainly have a lot of
people and
space in
robbing them
California
is
since nobody
unacceptable.
goes. Well, that's not. I mean, cleaning up public
Tucker,
spaces would be the way I would describe it.
I tried to talk to you about Scripture, and you didn't want to. But I'd be happy to remind us all that we are judged by how we treat the least of these.
Right. Well, I agree with that. But let's ask the deeper questions, because I know that you want to. Why is it California's so-called homeless problem is often blamed on housing costs, and as in most liberal cities, they're really high because it's all rich people who live there. But Tokyo has even higher housing prices, and it has no homeless problem. What does Tokyo know that Oakland and San Francisco don't know?
Most other democracies in the world devote a significantly larger share of their public funds to helping the homeless, to providing social services, to providing job training programs.
No, nope, not true. Not true. They don't have a ton of broken families and drug problems in Japan. Do you think maybe there's a connection between the total disintegration of the American family and the fact that a lot of people are living outside on heroin?
We actually have a very sad situation of families living outside. We have people living on the streets who get up and go to work every day and come back and sleep in a tent.
Yes, I know, that's true.
After working all day because the housing is so scarce and so expensive. And that's why in our budget debate taking place tomorrow night, I'll be fighting for us to do more to protect affordable housing and to do more.
Okay, but really quick, have you thought about the Tokyo thing? I mean, because they don't spend more money than you do on the homeless. They spend much less. Their housing prices are higher. I mean, maybe there's a solution there. I don't know if we're going to solve it on the show because we're almost out of time. But have you thought about that? Will you think about it?
Well, most of the countries with less of this problem have universal health care, so people don't get pushed into financial dire straits from a health care cost. But I also know that we don't get better.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. Rebecca, thank you. I hope you'll come back anytime. It's great to see you. The New York Times just came after the show for daring to question that newspaper's accuracy. We'll slowly unpack that next. Well, for decades, the Bay Area has let itself become a haven for vagrants at the expense of the few normal people who still live there. Finally, somebody had enough. Earlier this month, a man was videotaped gathering up a vagrant's belongings and throwing them in the trash. It was on public property, by the way. Now, that man has been charged with second-degree robbery, and of course, the area remains the same hive of needles and human waste it has been for years. Rebecca Kaplan is an Oakland City Council member, and she joins us tonight. Rebecca, thank you for coming on. So this story had me thinking, Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. If I showed up on your front lawn with a sleeping bag and a case of vodka and sort of moved in to stay, which I may do, would you be arrested for trying to make me leave?
Well, I would welcome you. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you and hope we could have dinner sometime. But I think more to the point, the person who threw the belongings, in this case of a homeless man, into the lake and stole somebody else's cell phone, that person would be prosecuted whether the person they did that to was homeless or not. However, as to the deeper solutions, tomorrow the City of Oakland will be debating our budget, and I will be fighting for better solutions to homelessness. We need to be helping people live in situations other than our streets and sidewalks, even while I absolutely condemn this assault and would condemn it no matter who it was done to.
So, but I mean, it just seems like the cards are kind of stacked against normal people, married people with kids who have jobs, kind of like the backbone of America, the people who actually built the country. They're having a tougher time living in your state, so they're leaving, as you know. People get arrested for taking homeless detritus, trash off public property, but they don't get arrested for defecating in public? How does that work? What's the thinking behind that?
Well, certainly if people want to volunteer to help clean up our lake, our creeks, our public ways, we have volunteer opportunities. We have ways that people can help clean up, and I welcome that. This was not an act of cleaning up the lake. This was stealing someone's belongings and throwing them into the lake. That was a trashing of it.
But wait a second. We have a ready-made group of people, a lot of them young, with tons of time on their hands. We call them the homeless. Why don't they clean up their crap? Why are they the ones littering? Why aren't they cleaning up?
Actually, it's predominantly not the homeless people that are littering. We did a study, and about 85% of the illegal dumping is coming from a variety of illegal sources having nothing to do with the homeless. And so the illegal dumping is a huge problem that we're fighting to crack down on.
And illegal is the word.
Is very serious.
Well, good. I'm glad you're doing that.
And so that's
you're getting to the causes.
One of the things we need to take action on. As well as,
but still, why wouldn't
providing better places for the homeless to be? In other words, it's not enough to say where we don't want people to go. We need to provide the places, and I'm fighting for us to use public land, churches that have offered to volunteer their sites to allow the homeless to have places they can be, where they can get assistance, where they can get matched with social services and turn their lives around while living in places better than the sidewalks.
But have you?
But in the meantime,
and churches
assaulting
certainly have a lot of
and
space
robbing
in California
them is
since nobody
unacceptable.
goes. Well, that's not, I mean, cleaning up public
Tucker,
spaces would be the way I would describe it.
I tried to talk to you about Scripture, and you didn't want to, but I'd be happy to remind us all that we are judged by how we treat the least of these.
Right. Well, I agree with that, but let's ask the deeper questions, because I know that you want to. Why is it California's so-called homeless problem is often blamed on housing costs, and as in most liberal cities, they're really high, because it's all rich people who live there. But Tokyo has even higher housing prices, and it has no homeless problem. What does Tokyo know that Oakland and San Francisco don't know?
Most other democracies in the world devote a significantly larger share of their public funds to helping the homeless, to providing social services, to providing job training programs.
No, nope, not true. Not true. They don't have a ton of broken families and drug problems in Japan. Do you think maybe there's a connection between the total disintegration of the American family and the fact that a lot of people are living outside on heroin?
We actually have a very sad situation of families living outside. We have people living on the streets who get up and go to work every day and come back and sleep in a tent.
Yes, I know, that's true.
After working all day because the housing is so scarce and so expensive. And that's why in our budget debate taking place tomorrow night, I'll be fighting for us to do more to protect affordable housing and to do more.
Okay, but really quick, have you thought about the Tokyo thing? I mean, because they don't spend more money than you do on the homeless. They spend much less. Their housing prices are higher. I mean, maybe there's a solution there. I don't know if we're going to solve it on the show because we're almost out of time. But have you thought about that? Will you think about it?
Well, most of the countries with less of this problem have universal health care, so people don't get pushed into financial dire straits from a health care cost. But I also know that we don't get better.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. Rebecca, thank you. I hope you'll come back anytime. It's great to see you.